episode of Signals and Symptoms podcast. We are, as usual, grateful to our experts. Today, we're going to deep dive into two things. Number one, how Edward Marks started his journey in digital health transformation, and then move into artificial intelligence in healthcare. Before we dive deep into it, let me give you this few small updates from the last week. It has not been a very crazy week in terms of updates, but we have really seen that things are moving amazing. This is an amazing read. I don't know if you know this. I'm personally very deep into technicals of digital twins because that is really the future of truly individualized healthcare. This is a fantastic read. Please go ahead and for Peter Conaway, Roger Highfield, amazing work. And then one of these days, we're going to dig deep into what digital twins are, etc. OpenAI released their first open source model. When they say open source, this is also what we call open weight. What that means is that I can literally download the whole .dem model, put it in my GPU at home or at an NES server, and then start using it. The performance is insanely good. As a matter of fact, if you look at the 120 billion model, it's as good, it's nearly as good as O3 and even O4. So this is amazing that they have made it, again, not just open source, open weight models. Another Chinese company released GLM-5 4.5. Again, this is way beyond that I was expecting from an open source model, because this is now 4.5, which is even slightly better than state of the art Claude 4 Opus. Again, when I talk about these open source models, open source and open weight models, it is important to understand that the field is going to start moving fast very significantly because of these technologies available to all of us. That was the updates from the week. I'm going to go ahead and introduce a little bit about my good friend Edward Marks. So Edward has been ex-CIO of Cleveland Clinic, has been ex-CIO of multiple, and then more importantly, we connected over a mission. If you save a life, it is as if you save a life of all mankind. And I have been to his house in South Lake. I have met his amazing wife and have enjoyed their hospitality personally. And that was actually on a book launch event. And then he has two books. The one is what we call Diagnose. And this has been an amazing read when he goes through his own personal journey and then identifies how important it is in terms of healthcare patient journey and where technology is so important. And then, of course, how to improve the patient experience. It is, again, so beautifully written. Being a director of Neuro ICU, I wish I had this book when I was the director. So again, I'm gonna let Edward take the stand, and then we're gonna have a discussion about his journey in digital transformation of healthcare as an ex-CIO, as an advisor to people like me, making us more productive, companies and startups like us, helping us improve products that improve patients and physicians' lives. Edward, start with I don't know. Where do you want to start with?
Yeah. No, Janae, thanks for having me. No, it's so great to be part of Signal and Symptoms. This is a very unique podcast and live streaming at the same time, so people could definitely interact and we're super flexible and agile in terms of things that what people want to hear about in the future, talk about. So it's great platform that you are the mastermind of, and I get to hang out with you and Harvey and others. This is a great tool. Yeah, my journey started. I'll just be very brief, and then we'll get to the AI part. But yeah, my journey started really young. I was 16, in a medical center as a janitor, and it was a great job for a kid because this part was an outpatient clinic, so it closed at 4:30 and didn't open up again until 7 a.m. So basically, me and my two best friends from high school, we could start anytime after 4:30. It just took us 3 hours. Anytime after 4:30, as long as it was done by 7 a.m. So for a kid, with sports and all the different things going on, it was a great job because it had super flexibility. But I'm telling you, I didn't have words to really articulate it the way I can now. But even though I had a Sony Walkman with a giant head earpiece, which are popular again today, ironically. But I was blasting AC/DC or something, Ozzy Osbourne, and something spoke to me about, wow, I really want to work in healthcare. I mean, I was a janitor, I was cleaning outpatient clinics and labs and things like that. But I just knew I wanted to be part of healthcare because I was like seeing these offices and where clinicians worked and patients, and I was like, man, seems like something special. And I also grew up with my mom being very sick the entire time that I was growing up in the house, and so I was exposed to a lot of healthcare that way as well. And so something just spoke to me like, gosh, I could be in healthcare. So when I struggled a little bit in school, not because I don't have the IQ, but I got distracted by other things that high schoolers sometimes get distracted by, and so I had to really work hard to make money to pay for school. And so I joined the Army Reserve, and they said, Ed, you could be anything you want. And they gave me a list of different things, infantryman or whatever. And there was one that said combat medic. And I was like, oh, I want to be a combat medic because that goes with what's in my heart. So I did that, and that just reinforced again this whole concept of wanting to be in healthcare. And then I graduated. I got my life together. I graduated college, and I was in the Army as a combat officer. But I had an opportunity to have a civilian career, and I was like drawn to healthcare again. And one thing led to another, and I couldn't get a job because I didn't have the experience and didn't have the perfect education. But I got a job as an anesthesia tech. So even though I had a master's degree at this point, I just took any job because I wanted to be in healthcare. So it was a job I could get because it was a temp job, so I didn't have a lot of competition. And so I got in. They realized, oh, Ed's got skills, and so from there I became the IT manager inside the OR where I worked already. And that again just reinforced everything I wanted to do and learn about how technology can actually impact quality of care, safety, save lives. And it was like, man, I want to do this. And then something else happened next with the birth of our youngest daughter. And again, for the sake of brevity, I won't go into the story, but it was there that without a doubt, I saw the intersection of the clinical practice with technology to save lives, in this case, my daughter's life. And it was like, dang, this is my calling. It is tech part. And I was not a tech person. So that makes it even, more, funny of a story, just how it all works. Because it comes down to passion a lot of times and like what your vision is. And so you learn the tools later sometimes, which is like AI. So anyways, from there, I took my first IT job, and then I got successive jobs. I realized, wow, I want to be the leader. I want to be a CIO. And so, as you mentioned, I was CIO of several different healthcare organizations before I moved on to the vendor partner side as a CXO, a CEO for one firm, as a chief digital officer for another global firm, and sit on some boards now for some hospitals and things like that. Write, as you mentioned, some books and speak a bit. And yeah, so I'm still very active, part of the ecosystem, traveling around the country and the world, helping different organizations in different ways, talking to a lot of people like yourself, great clinicians and great technologists, bringing the two together again to save lives, like your similar mission. And so that's really how I got into this whole, technology realm, back since my high school days.
Amazing story. I love it. And then, by the way, just to let you know, this has not been very different, by the way, for when you look at the entrepreneurships. I'm going to be talking much less. I'm going to let Edward talk more. Wisdom number one, it takes time. Wisdom number two, everyone starts at the bottom. Now, wisdom number three, which is actually that I want to show you right now, is that you need two things. Number one is, and by the way, if you haven't read this book, it is an amazing book, The Power of Passion and Perseverance, which is by definition called grit. And this is the only proven evidence-based system to know if a person is going to be extraordinarily successful. I mean, most people are successful. They take care of families and everything. But when you say extraordinary successful, what that means is that you break the glass ceiling and move forward. Thank you so much, Edward. Keep going.
Yeah. So, our focus, is AI. And so it's like, how do you continue to evolve yourself? In addition to having the grit, to have that determination and perseverance that matches up with your passions and making things happen, is like, how do you continuously evolve, right? So we've chosen in part technology, clinical and technology as our career path, but you could become obsolete within, a couple of years, given the pace of change. So, and that's indeed what happens, Junaid. As you know, you've got clinical colleagues like that who don't want to evolve and are stuck. And that's why, when I go see a clinician, I always interview my clinicians, as you've probably picked up in that book. It's like, I want to know, are they up with technology? It's the same when I get on a plane, I always look, when you get on a plane, check this out. Next time you get on a plane, when you walk into the fuselage, on the main door that you're walking through, on the door jamb, there'll be a small metal plate. And on that metal plate will be the manufacturing information, including the date of that airplane. And I always check that out. It's too late. I should try to check it out ahead of time. It's too late. But sometimes I'm getting on these aircraft that are pretty old. But all I want to know, I'm fine if the aircraft fuselage is old. I want to know that those engines are updated. I want to know that the technology in the cockpit is the latest and greatest, right? And so it's just like that. I do the same with my clinicians. I want to make sure that they are top of their game, and I'll ask them questions because I want to know. And thankfully, my PCP, she was one of the first to do ambient listening, and I love my interactions with her. And before I checked out my new cardiologist, I did all sorts of background checks that I could, and I really do. This is, it's like some people might look at their school. I don't care what school. You graduated, you got your MD, that's awesome. But a lot has changed since then, so I want to know what you're doing since then. And it's the same with CIOs. It's people that are leading technical. It's like a lot of them haven't changed. A lot of them are stuck in the era in which they were trained. And that's a really dangerous thing. And so sometimes people ask me a lot of questions about career advice and things like that. And I can just look and I can tell by their outputs and, whether it's through speaking things that they've done or different posts or things like that, where they are, have they evolved or not? And, these organizations are looking for very evolved leaders. And if you're not evolving, then you're going to become obsolete. And in some organizations, they're just obsolete because they haven't moved as an entire organization. Everyone in their C-suite is sort of a tech laggard. So we don't want to be that. And so I think one of the hallmarks of my career so far has been that I was always curious, right? And I think that's the key, is like, you got to be curious, like what's next? What's happening out there that you should be aware of, because you may have to bring that into healthcare to help lead your organization and ultimately save lives and the mission and vision of your particular organization. So that's sort of the first thing that I've always leveraged, and I haven't done it perfectly. There's been certainly dips, where I've sort of fallen behind a little bit and had to like run and catch up, but at least I recognized, oh my gosh, I have a deficiency, and here are some things I can do. And I imagine most of our listeners are like you and I, definitely like me, where I've fallen behind. And so I've had to do things to just catch up and then get back ahead. So that happens. So there's no judgment or anything, especially with AI. I think a lot of people are probably fell under the curve, on the bottom side of that curve where they're sort of laggards trying to catch up. And that's okay, because we're going to offer some solutions, like things that we've all done to sort of bridge that gap. So that's been my evolution, is just generally the mindset, like Ed, whether it's blockchain and whether it's something that's overhyped and never really happens, that doesn't matter. The important thing is that you are educated about it, you know about it, and you can speak to it and think about applications for your organization. And so it's the same with AI. We were talking AI many years ago. As we know, the history goes way back, so we don't need to recover the history. But I remember at Cleveland Clinic, I was one of the presenters. We did this top 10 innovations every year. And I remember the one that I presented, this was like 2018, was AI. We already were seeing it as a really big thing. Of course, again, it existed for a generation prior, but this was the first time like we were seeing it like, in daily practice, making a difference. And that's almost, 10 years ago. And so now people are finally talking about it more generally. So it's always being curious, getting ready, learning about new things. And so I've got a few tips that we could talk about, like how you might go about doing that. But that's been my journey. That's how I did it.
No, I love it. Let me recap. Satya Nadella, the Microsoft CEO, said software is going to eat the world. That was 20 years ago. And then he said AI is going to eat software. So clearly we're doing it. Number two, great insight from Edward. Like you're doing continuous medical education for all clinicians. Given the age of AI and software, you need to have continuous technology education as well, not in terms of coding or something like that, but understanding what new tools are available to make your life better and your patient's life better.
Yeah.
So it's continuous technology education, grateful. And number three, very important insight. Believe it or not, people have big titles, and unfortunately people lag. And sometimes they lag because of personal reasons.
Yeah.
I had, about a medical condition for 3 months that I wasn't able to obtain, which is fine. But it's important to maintain curiosity and maintain that continuous learning experience that you're going to go ahead. So Ed, beautiful segue here. Now, again, I'm gonna come on your podcast and tell you what
Yeah.
my personal journey is and
Yes.
how I teach myself AI. But you tell me, like, how do you stay updated? It's, to be honest with you, as a full-time working physician, also working on a startup which is also AI based. I have 18 AI engineers now, and still, updating is really hard.
Yeah. No, it is. It is. It's a struggle for everyone. So again, there's no judgment or anything like that. And I certainly don't have it all figured out. Then that's the beauty of this podcast. We just share our perspectives, and hopefully you learn one or two things from one another, and you get better. Yeah, I say that AI won't replace you, but will reveal you. So it'll reveal whether you are that leader or not. So it's okay, like we said, that you might find yourself lagging, but a leader is going to fill that gap and then take a more leadership position long term and learn. And so the different things that I do, the first one that I advocate strongly for is you have to use AI yourself. Too often we pontificate. People get in the ivory tower and they might read something about AI and try to act knowledgeable about AI, but when you go look under the covers, they don't use AI. And it's like, and I remember the same thing happening back in mobile when I first really was transforming myself, but learning about digital transformation and asked to lead a major organization for digital transformation. And I got a lot of pushback from my peers and some executives. And these were executives that, when I traveled with them, still used paper. And I don't want to go into specifics. I'm not trying to shame anyone, but they were so far
No
laggards.
need.
But they would read the magazines or they would read online and think they were experts, but they didn't use it themselves. And that is the best way, is just force yourself. So that's what I did, and that's what everyone should do. I got a couple of the apps. I just did some research. It's like, what are the top 10 apps? And I got those apps and I started just experimenting with PowerPoints, right? Because I wanted to do something that was useful in my business. So I was like, okay, help me create slides. I write a lot, so I was like, all right, let's see what something written by AI is like. What's that like? What's the prompt engineering? Those sort of things. How can I incorporate different things, like my house thermostat now? The whole system is AI. And I just get involved and learn. And my wife's a clinician, as you know, and so she comes home and she has all the pajama time. So I'm like, AI, let's do it. Let's learn about how this can help you. Because I know theoretically, because I led this in a major hospital, but I didn't use it myself. So now I have, I'm right there every step of the way. So is use things yourself. It's amazing, and that's, of all the things that I might share, that is not only the first one because it's the most important, but probably accounts for at least 50% of everything you can do. It's just use it yourself, because what happens is it exposes you to new ideas and new thinking, and then you have these aha moments like, oh yeah, what about this? We can do that. And so that's really important. The other thing is listen to podcasts like Signal and Symptoms. And I'm serious. I don't know, again, this is no judgment, and I know I can come across like really harsh, but people just have to know my heart. Stop listening to music that's not going to add any value to you all the time.
Except for AC/DC and Journey.
Yeah.
Keep going.
I love my music, and I do listen to music, but sometimes that's all people listen to. So you have finite time. Why don't you listen to a podcast that's going to add some value? So get some podcasts that are AI oriented to fill that gap. So whatever your gap is, listen to stuff. So I've got some gaps in my life continuously. And so there's certain go-to podcasts that I listen to because I learn new things. And so I'm just constantly learning. It's the same with AI. So Signal and Symptoms is a great one, but you can look for other ones out there that
Talks is a great one. I always listen to your talk.
Yeah. Digital Voices. Sometimes we'll have great people, and we'll have you on shortly. And so that's a good thing. The other thing is research. So I've done research. So I'm like, oh, well, using AI, of course, is I'll do a lot of research. Like, hey, what are the best applications outside of healthcare that we could use inside of healthcare? So I'm always looking outside of healthcare for ideas, because typically, not always, but typically, other industries are more advanced than healthcare, usually by 3 to 5 years. And so I always look to other industries. Well, hey, what are they doing with AI? And then I think about how do we bring that into healthcare? And I've done that a lot throughout my career, and people thought I was crazy, but it usually turned out pretty good that we would embrace something that some other industry had pioneered for us. Follow great people like Harvey and yourself. On Twitter and LinkedIn. It's amazing the content that you all put out, and you all have challenged me just even being part of Signal and Symptoms. I'm being exposed to a lot of things that I've not been exposed to before, and I'm loving it. I'm just eating it up. It's like, this is great. This is what I need. So that's another thing. It's just jump in, research, follow other people, remain curious. Probably one of the most common responses I get from my podcast, Digital Voices, where I've had almost 300 guests now. And when I think about what are the common threads in all these super successful high achievers, it is curiosity. They are so curious. They're always asking questions. And if you find yourself not curious because you're too busy, you're overwhelmed, you're stressed out, you need to take a step back and sort of evaluate that part and create the capacity for curiosity. Because if you're not curious, you will be, one of those laggards we talked about earlier, and it's not good for you. It's not good for your organization. Eventually, you'll be booted out. So you've got to, maintain and be up there. Another one is books. Yeah, you mentioned books already. Harvey was part of this book, Voice of Innovation, and you'll be part of the next book. And so this is a book on AI, what other people are doing. So it's not just one person's theory. It's really like 30 different organizations. I'm not pitching that book specifically. There's a lot of good AI books that are out there. I think one of the first ones that came out was from Microsoft, since you mentioned Microsoft earlier. Really good, thought-provoking things. The other thing is ask a lot of questions. That kind of goes back to curiosity, is ask people questions. And I think sometimes, we feel like, well, we can't ask a question because we'll appear dumb. We'll appear unknowledgeable. And so our pride takes over, and we kind of like hide behind, and again, we'll learn some buzzwords. Which, by the way, I have a buzzword calculator. I need to share it with the audience. I'll share it with you, and maybe we'll put it out there as a free thing. But it's a buzzword calculator. It's all paper-based, though. I need to put it in my AI and then generate something electronic. But basically, you pick 3 numbers, and you just look at these charts of the 3 numbers that you make up, and it'll make you sound like an AI expert. So that's what most people do, though. Not most, but many people do. They sort of fake it. And I'm saying, don't fake it. Ask questions. It's okay. Ask questions. Another thing is,
let me summarize some of the wisdom that you have shared. So to start on your personal journey for AI, Ed's recommendations are: A, convert to active learning as compared to passive learning, which is important that you do stuff and not just read. Number 2, have always multitude of sources that you can check. It could be Signal and podcast, other places, but make sure that you are constantly learning. Podcasts are better, in my opinion, in terms of learning, is because you are having this interaction. Somebody's reviewing it, revising it, so your brain actually takes notes, and that's important because there is a conversation. We as human beings naturally learn with conversations better. This is my neurologist talk, by the way. So number 3, he said that very importantly, don't get your ego get in the way. And that was something that I have to tell you, being the director of Neuro ICU. And then I'll say, okay, he's my employee AI engineer and teaching the shit out of me. Yes. Yes. I bow down, and I'm very, very grateful for your teaching, education, and learning. Again, do not shy, ask questions. That's number 3. And number 4, time is limited. So make sure you at least dedicate a portion of your time for continuous learning. And it should be a daily habit. Keep going, Ed.
Another really good one for me has been your kids. And if you don't have kids, it could be other people's kids. But the younger generation, we always talk about mentoring. So let me break it down into 2. One will be sort of this mentoring concept, and then something more practical. Well, that's really practical too, but another practical thing. So a lot of times we think about mentor. I need to have a mentor. So we look at someone a generation above us, which is cool, an older person that's been there, done that sort of thing. But you should also have a mentor that's a generation or 2 below you. And I've done this a couple times formally, where I've had a mentor and a generation 1 or 2 behind me. So these are kids, these are 20s, they're in their 20s, maybe now for me in their 30s, and I'm learning from them. They have a lot to teach me because they're digital natives, and pretty soon they'll be AI natives, right? Today's teenagers, probably AI natives. It may, maybe the ones that are just being born out, but I think everyone gets what I'm saying. Is like, hang out with kids, ask them questions about what they're using. And they may not even say the word AI because it's just part of the fabric of what society is today, right? Older apps and stuff are AI, but they don't say AI. It's just what they know. So, so the kids are really important. So, I do that with my kids. I got one kid in financial services. I'm asking him all the time how he's leveraging AI, and it's amazing what he's doing. I've got another kid in the music industry, and he showed me, and this was kind of interesting, Junaid. You might appreciate this. I invited a bunch of CIOs to his music studio in Nashville, and he showed them like this hit song he has. He showed them he rebuilt it from scratch. It's all AI how he did it, and they were so amazed. And it was kind of funny. These 40 and 50 and I don't know, maybe 60-year-old CIOs from big institutions everyone would recognize, they are like leaning forward, literally listening to my 20-something-year-old kid teach them about AI. And it was like I literally started crying that day watching this, because my kid holding court with these, older very well accomplished executives. This is my kid. This is the first time I saw him, as a professional. I was like, otherwise I always saw him as my kid. But it was pretty neat. But that's how I learned. It's like, okay, how do you do that? Well, how do you do that? Oh, you have your own LLM. How did you create your own LLM? How'd you get all his voice? You just ask a lot of questions, and then it comes about. So those are really good ones. And maybe the last one that's really practical, and I've used this technique a few times. I don't know if that it was purposeful, but a little bit purposeful, and that is speak on it. When you're forced to speak on a topic, you have to be expert. Otherwise, you're going to be found out, or it's going to be a terrible talk, and no one wants that reputation of being a terrible speaker. So I started being asked to speak about AI. I'm on the board of a health system. They're like, Ed, tell us about AI. And I myself was just starting to learn. I was probably a little bit behind. How we said sometimes there's a gap. I was definitely in a gap. I knew enough. I knew, average amount, but I needed to know more than average as a board member and about, given my career. And so I really had to use all these techniques we just talked about to like fill that gap and then go above. And that was one of them, is like when you're forced to speak, you're forced to do the research, you're forced to ask questions, you're forced to go look at different sources, you're forced to listen to other people, you're forced to read, and it does all this stuff. And all of a sudden, you start becoming expert. You're not going to become expert just because you give a speech on AI, but it's the process that you go through that helps you. So it's just another technique is volunteer. Do not volunteer. Don't say no to something because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be found out. No, use it as a catalyst to say, dang, I'm going to speak on this because I need to learn it. I want to learn it. I know it's important, and I've got the skills, to figure out how to become expert. And then you go and you do it, and then you keep building on it. So those are like, I don't know, 10 different things that people can utilize.
I'm going to review it because I need to continue to some of these things into my own life. So again, number one, again, active learning. One of the processes to mentor someone, which is extremely important because they bring a completely different perspective. Yep. We lived in a world of paper charts. That was my first year of residency. And now I cannot freaking believe if I'm going to write something on a paper. Number two, we're going to go ahead and see that most of these people are actually testing you in a strange way. I mean, the way even the youngsters ask questions is very different from my mindset. So I need to evolve my mindset. Very, very important. Number three, get speaking gigs. Not paid. It doesn't matter. Wherever you actually find time, go ahead and speak. The minute you speak, what it does is that and by the way, I'm not going to go into neurology, how the temporal lobe is connected to all of these, voice, visual, and other memory systems. But literally, it engages your whole brain. Yeah. And when you literally vocalizes it, it actually clarifies in your own mind. You will struggle initially, but then more and more you're going to understand where your true gaps are, and then you're going to realize to fill those gaps, and then of course become better at it. Again, speaking is not about just teaching. It is actually the best form of learning. Yeah. So thank you so much for that. And then of course the last one that he suggested, again, active learning. So move from passive learning to active learning. And also these podcasts are not just Signal Symptom. We don't want to do a self plug, but in either way, what you want to do is have these conversations, because these conversations initiate the neurons where your memories are including into an active learning process, because it feels like you're not just one of the audience, you're one of the speakers. Your brain goes into an active learning mode as compared to even reading a book. And then of course podcast can be done through cycling, doing a car ride, etc. Yeah. It's a fantastic way of doing it, etc. So mentee, speaker, active learning.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
ahead, Ed.
No, that's a great summary. I don't know that I have much more to offer in terms of my own sort of evolution on how I try to adapt to new technologies, including AI. But those are certainly like
So
10 things.
why don't we do this? Let me challenge you, of course. So think of me as an CIO of a hospital, and then I have 18. Actually, I'm a director of neuro ICU right now, for example, which I have been, so I know that. And I'm telling you that, hey, number one, these are the three problems. I work 12-hour shifts, at least 18 days a month, and then I have few gaps. Then I have to go through you know M&M meetings. Then I have to go to patient safety meetings. Then I have to go to all of this. Uh, Now, just put me as a hat as a director of neuro ICU
Yeah.
with you coming as a CIO. Tell me how do I plug it in? Because I'm just going to be honest with you, it is getting harder,
Yeah.
especially the amount of, let me tell you this. How do I deal with the onslaught of amazing, important information, and how do I differentiate between signal and noise in all this information?
Yeah. Well, my recommendation is you don't know until you walk in that person's shoes. And obviously, I can't go to medical school or anything like that, but there are things you can do. And I still do these today. I was just I'm in New York City. I just was in hospital for special surgery. I did the same thing last week at Wisconsin Children's Wisconsin. And I walk with the clinicians. And when I was in this lab with this clinician, and I just asked him all sorts of questions, and it got into AI. Like, asked him about AI. Has he thought about AI? How's AI helping him, enabling him? So I'm always curious, and I'm always in their space, because that's the only way we're going to understand. I've taken it next level. I'm going to come back and be practical, but I'm just to give some listeners an extra challenge. What I did, I served one day, one shift, 8-hour shift a week in the OR. You can find a spot. You don't have to be clinical. I have a slight clinical background, right, with combat medic and anesthesia tech, but very slight. You don't have to be clinically trained to volunteer to do something somewhere in patient care to give you that exposure. So that's what I did. I worked in the OR. I had we didn't want to expose who I was, because we didn't want to, intimidate certain people. So I just sort of had a generic badge, but one shift a week, and they just thought I was their peers. The other anesthesia techs thought, I was some guy who was PRN, and every week I got to hang out with clinicians and see firsthand, like, oh my gosh, that they're still doing that. That's a manual process. Or what was the most shocking was in the OR how so much of the biomed equipment, because it was separate from IT, is not connected, and they're still manually putting in inputs into the EHR. I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this is happening. So, and then there's tons of different things that I saw. Wow, we could automate that. That's voice. We can automate that. And so we started to do things. That wasn't my primary. Again, my thing there was to serve the anesthesia, anesthesiologists and so forth. But I was picking up on these signals, and then I'd go back. And so that's the best thing. And other things that people can do is rounding. So that was like intense rounding, and I recommend it for any serious leader in IT to do what I did. But the next level is just rounding. It's not the same. It's usually only once a month, and it's maybe for an hour, but at least you're getting out there. You should spend more time out of your office than in your office if you're a true leader. And so that's the thing. You got to be with, in this case, healthcare, it's clinicians. Those are your primary customers, because you're not directly serving the patients, it's indirect. So the people who are the clinicians. So you got to be hanging out with them, learning and figuring out how can I take AI and really help them. So back to getting more granular now with your example, I would do something like I just mentioned. How do I hang out and really understand beyond theory, what your workload is like, what your work life is like, and how we might leverage technology. So I would shadow, I would watch, I would observe. I'd have the same for my team and my experts, do the same thing. and then figure out what can we do. So again, I'm going back to the things I already mentioned, but here was a new one that I forgot about is my network. I'm going to reach out to my network of peers, say, what are you all doing? I've got this awesome doc leader, and he's struggling in this particular area. What are you doing? How is your doc in that area doing? And then so I'll have conversations with my network. So leverage your network, find out what are they doing. I'll go to my software vendor. You should always have a great relationship with your primary vendors. I'll be like, hey, I've got this doc really struggling with this. And so I've worked with great vendors who would actually send people out and hang out with you. And I love that. I could give you so many examples. I've done that at least 10 times in my career where the company that we work with, they're like, Ed, just pay for their flights and their hotels, and we'll address this. And sure enough, they sent 2 or 3 of their best people. They hung out with someone like yourself for 2-3 days, and they came up with solutions. And all it cost me was $5,000 for travel. And so those are the different things. So my job is to make your job easier so you can focus on taking care of patients. And so by doing that, by hanging out with you, by bringing my own experts, by reaching out to my network, by bringing in the vendor, figuring out, hey, are there any AI solutions? Doesn't have to be AI, but we're focused on AI. What are the AI capabilities that we've never leveraged that we could turn on or add to make your life easier, to give you more margin in your life so that you then not only have a better, the work-life balance type thing, but also have more time to be curious and lead. And then that's the other thing that I would do. And again, these are sort of like little hacks that I've used very successfully in my life. I would then grab you and make you part of my team. And I've done that so many times. And I literally could name names of people whose careers we helped jumpstart. Correct. Because we brought them into and then because I'm like, I don't know, Junaid, you know better than anyone else. I can do all these little hacks that I just shared, and it'll move us 10 meters, but you could move us 100 meters. Why don't you just hang out with us? And so we had the ability to create some positions. I know not everyone can do that, and sometimes you got to pull dollars from one area to another. But I'm like, I want to pull dollars out of here that's not impacting patient lives and put it here where it'll help patient lives and our clinician lives. And so I moved dollars around, whatever it took, and tried to, even if it was a point, I had several docs that were like, of course, we had CMIOs, but I had several docs that were like 0.1 time, like 10% of their time, or I would get 1 shift a week essentially. And it was great having all these advisors and these specific specialties. So that's another way of doing it. But my job, right? Anyone listening that's a leader in tech, in healthcare, your job, your primary customer is the clinician who's taking care of the patients and their families. And so your job is to make their job as easy as possible, give them more margin in their life so they can help you. And these are different ways of doing it.
Love it. Let me review it. Number one, I think the most important thing is to leverage your network. And it is the reason is that it gives you, with this onslaught of signal and noise, it will tell you the priority. Because your network may actually be doing it, implementing it, using it practically. So your network will tell you what the priority should be. They're going to share the most important stuff on LinkedIn, etc. So anytime someone shares something on LinkedIn, I pay an extra attention. Of course, people do self-plug, but at the end of the day, if somebody's sharing something, they have reviewed it and there's a reason for it. So that's very important. So I love it that you said that network sets priorities. Number two, it is, again, very important, and I'm going to give you a clinician mindset and then go from there, that if you are curious and you're going to go ahead, you need to schedule time with your CEO and CIOs of your hospital.
Yeah.
It's going to take some time, believe it or not. It took me sometimes 6 weeks to get an appointment. But when you do, believe it or not, most of these leaders, including the minute they come to the leadership position, they have amazing listening skills.
Yeah.
I talked in front of a CEO for continuously on 28 minutes, and he was quiet. He was just taking notes. And then he comes back and said, excellent. And then I hated what he did next. Is Junaid, good. You're part of this committee. Let's come in. As I do.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you have to understand that you're going to come in. And the last thing that Edward said is amazingly important. All true innovation comes from combining 2 different industries. And in this, we have the most powerful, which is clinical versus and IT and technology. And these are 2 separate, complete different industries. And if you combine them, you bring true innovation. And this is a crossover, right? I mean, it has nothing to do with anything. People have used, technology in cell phone to make better EVs. Why? This is exactly where innovation comes from, which
Yeah.
is combining two different universities. So Ed, I'm gonna give you a little bit of my perspective.
Yeah.
When people comes in from physician and they say, well, I don't have time, and mostly of them is that, look, you are already have to come for continued medical education. You actually paid for this conference. You flew for it. You're gonna come here, and then you're gonna basically get educated, get CME,
Yeah.
points, and then go from there. Why is it so hard in your mind to say that there is a reason for continued technology education? I mean, unless a board certification defines it, that's only not the way to go for it. So
Right.
the way I look at it is that hey, as CME is important in your life, continued technology education should be part and parcel of all physicians' lives. Now that again, I'm going to repeat, the software is going to eat the world, and AI is going to eat the software.
Yeah.
So it is going to be part and parcel of everything. And that was amazing. I love it. Thank you so much for this amazing thing. Next week, we're going to talk to Harvey the same way. I just want to make sure that everyone goes through their personal journey
Yeah.
and then tells us. And again, one of the things I want to reiterate and reappreciate is that the beauty of Ed is that first of all, he understands that, hey, so what if you're wrong? So what if things are not getting better? People have reinvented themselves in multiple areas. I mean, I'm reinvented myself from a neuro ICU to now as founder. It takes time.
Yeah.
Be humble and keep us humble. I mean, if you're sometimes it, thank you so much, because when you ask questions and we can't answer it, it
Right.
humbles us. So thank you for all your engagement. Thank you, Ed, for coming again. Talk to you next week. Thank you.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you, Junaid, and you're a great leader, and thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Appreciate it.